This video is all about transformations. Make sure you glue in your graphic organizer at the bottom, and we'll be doing some definitions at the top. First, let's start off with a definition. What's a transformation anyway? So a transformation is a function that changes the original position of a figure, but whatever the new figure is, it's congruent to the original one. So we call the original figure the pre-image, and we call the image after it's been changed the image. So you could think of this as like the before, and you could think of this as the after. So your keywords then are transformation, pre-image, and image. Now there are three types of transformations. There's a translation, a rotation, and a reflection. So these are my three original pictures, and I'm going to show you what each of those represent. So for example, a translation means that you have your original shape, which is right here, and to translate it simply means to slide it or to move it from one side to the other. So I'm going to translate this over to the right and down a little. So the translation is simply taking one shape and moving it in some direction, so it's a slide. A rotation is what you would expect it would be. So from my original shape, all I'm doing is keeping it in the same location, but maybe I'm rotating it. Again, these are all congruent. The only difference is that they're being moved somewhere. Last but not least is my reflection, and a reflection is probably the one you're the most aware of. So a reflection is when you take a shape and you reflect it about either the x-axis or the y-axis, and you're just going to see kind of its image, but upside down. And I'm going to try really hard to draw this upside down. Here we go. So that would be a reflection. So let's start off with translations. Let's imagine that you're starting off with these 3 points right here, and I've plotted those 3 points, and it actually creates this pre-image of a triangle. So this is my before, or my pre-image. Now if I want to translate it, if I want to slide it in one direction or the other, but keep it in the same kind of orientation, here's what you would do. You would take the original XY values that you've been given, and then you would add or subtract a number, or add or subtract a number to the x of the y axis, to x of the y coordinate, or both. So let's actually do one. For my first translation, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my original pre-image, and I'm going to take my x values and add 3, but I'm going to keep my y values the same. Okay, so that means my y values will still be -1, 4, and 1, but my x values are going to each go up by 3, making this 0, 4, and 7. Let's take a look at what those points would be. So 0, -1 would be here. 4, 4 would move it here, and 7, 1 is over here in this corner. So now I have the same triangle, but now what it's done is it's shifted in that direction. So it's translated to the right. Now I have my image. Okay, let's try again. Let's imagine that I take my pre-image and I'm going to translate it in a different way. This time I'm going to take my x and y values, and I'm going to take my x value and subtract 1, and I'm going to take my y value and subtract 3. Let's see what that does to my original picture. So again, I'm looking at my original x and y values. My x coordinates are all going to go down by 1. So -4, 0, and 3. And my y values are all going to go down by 3. So -4, 1, and -2. Let's see what my new triangle looks like now. So -4, -4 is down here. 0, 1 is here. And 3, -2 is here. And if I connect my 3 points together, if I compare this shape to this one, let's see what's happened. Well, it's shifted down, and then it's gone a little bit to the left. And that makes sense because we made our x value become lower, and we made our y value go lower. So this was a translation in 2 different directions, down and to the left. Now let's look at rotations. So I've already filled in the same points from our last shape. So here's my pre-image. Go ahead and fill those in again. And you're going to need to write really small to fit what I'm writing into this space, but I think you can do it, but unfortunately I can't here, so I'm going to do that math over here. So there are a couple standard rotations that you can do. You can do a 90-degree rotation, you can do a 180-degree rotation, and a 270-degree rotation. A 360 rotation would just bring you back to the original spot. So here are those options. So if I wanted to do a 90-degree rotation, I would take my original x values, and all I would do is I would switch the order of my values, and I would have negative y's. For a 180-degree rotation, I would take both of my x's and y values and make them the opposite value. And for a 270-degree rotation, I would take my x and y values, and I would have a positive y and a negative x value, and they would switch places. Now, it's kind of hard to envision what that effect would do, so let's actually see what would happen. So first we're going to do a 90-degree rotation here, and that's going to be the image that we create. Okay, so let's see what happens. I'm going to take my x, y values, and I'm going to use my rule here. I'm going to have negative y be my first value, and x be my second. So let's see what I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is take these x values and copy them in the y location, because my function says to switch the order and put it in the second spot. So my x values are negative 3, 1, and 4, and I'm putting them in the second position. Now I'm going to take my y values, write their opposite in the first spot. So I have a negative 1, so 1. I see a positive 4, so negative 4. I see a positive 1, so negative 1. Now that should mean that my triangle is going to rotate. Let's see if it actually does. So 1, negative 3, negative 4, 1, and negative 1, 4. Now if I connect those, you can effectively see that this image has rotated in this direction 90 degrees. So now let's try a 270-degree rotation. I wonder what that would look like. So, okay, according to our notes, that means I'm going to take my original xy values, I'm going to take the y values, bring them to the front, and write the opposite of the x values for my y values. Okay, so again, I'm looking at my pre-image points. So I'm going to take all my y values and put them here without changing them. So that's easy, negative 1, 4, and 1. And my y values, I'm going to write the opposite of my x values. So I'm going to take these and write the opposite values. So that's a 3, a negative 1, and a negative 4. Okay, what does this look like? Negative 1, positive 3, 4, negative 1, and 1, negative 4. So what does this rotation look like? Okay, so I'm going to connect my points. Okay, so how much does this go on? Well, this is actually taking your original shape and coming all the way around almost a 360, right about there. That's a 270-degree rotation. Last but not least, reflections. So here's our same pre-image, and I'm going to ask again that you, in this small section here, try to fit in what I'm going to write over here. But this one's not as bad. Now, if I wanted to reflect about the x-axis, here's what I would do. I would take my x and y original values, and all I would do is take my x values and keep them the same, but I would write the opposite y values. So that's how I would reflect the image. What if I wanted to reflect it about the y-axis? Well, all I would do is take my x and my y values from my original shape, and I would write the opposite of my x values and keep my y values the same. I think this one's a little bit easier to imagine. So the first one we're going to do is about the x-axis. So let's try that one out. So I'm going to take my x and y values, and all I'm going to do is keep my x values the same, but I'm going to write the negative of my y values. So that's negative 3, 1, and 4, and the opposite of my y values. Let's see what that looks like. -3, 1, 1, -4, and 4, -1. This should be as if my triangle were looking into a pool and seeing its reflection. That makes a lot of sense. So it's almost as if there's a line here, and my other shape is right here. So down here, this is my image about the x-axis. That's a horizontal reflection. Okay, now let's try and see what it looks like about the the y-axis. Okay, for this one, I'm going to take my x and y values. This time I'm going to write the opposite of my x values and keep my y values the same. And again, I'm looking at my pre-image here. So that's 3, -1, and -4. And my y values will stay the same. Let's see what this looks like. So 3, -1, -1, +4, -4, +1. Let me draw my triangle. Okay, in this case, here's my y-axis line, and you can kind of imagine that my triangle's over here. So in this case, this is my image here, and that would be a vertical reflection, like as if you were looking into a mirror.